Okay, welcome to another Fly With Me video. And this time I'm going to simply repeat the flight that I did last time, simply for the fact that the last one ended in failure. And after that failure, I spent a couple minutes messing around, and I think I figured out more or less what I did wrong. So I thought I would just simply try again. So I'm on Mars in the XR2, and I'm going to try to take off, fly to Phobos, and rendezvous. So I'll bring up a line plane, select target, choose the moon as the body, and the first thing I can do better in this flight versus what I did last time, I can go ahead and fast forward time and bring the relative inclination down a little bit. It won't get very low, but at least I can improve it by about 1.5 degrees. So I'll just press T, take the warp out to 100, maybe 1,000, and we can see the relative inclination coming down. And I know just from checking this out prior to doing this video that it won't get much lower than about 11 point, I believe it was 11.6. Yeah, about right there. About 11.68, I believe that was the lowest point. So that'll improve things just a little bit. Bring up the external MFD. And go ahead and turn the APU on. So we get the hover doors already open. And stow the radiator for takeoff. I'll open one more external MFD here. Bring up the map. And you can see here we get Phobos really close to an equatorial orbit around almost around the Earth, but rather around Mars. So we're just going to take off as before and fly with the heading of about 90 degrees. And that should keep our relative inclination rate at about 0.00 across the board. So we'll have an improvement in the takeoff as well. Okay, so I believe that's everything. Let's go ahead and do this.
Information. APU running. Wheels up.
Raise the landing gear.
Up. Gear up and locked.
Okay, we have rotation thrusters already set. So let me rotate to 90 degrees. And we'll go to full throttle. Pitch up just a little bit. Turn off the hover engines.
Mach 1.
Close the hover doors. You can see our relative inclination.
Mach 2.
11.68, right where we were before. or the rate is staying at 0.000.
Mach 3.
Keep a little bit of a steep pitch till we get out of the thicker part of the Martian
Mach 4.
atmosphere.
Mach 5.
And go ahead and start letting the nose settle down.
Mach 6. Information. APU running.
Suppose we can save some APU for now.
Mach 7.
Okay, go ahead and level out.
Mach 8. Mach 10. Mach 11. Mach 12.
Just trying to bring the velocity vector closer to even or level.
Mach 13.
See, the apoapsis is still climbing. So go ahead and pitch down just a little bit more.
Mach 14. Mach 15.
And we don't want our apoapsis to be too far out, so go ahead and kill the engines at this point, even though we're not quite at orbital velocity yet. Okay, start the APU. Deploy the radiator. Switch over to the orbit HUD, go to prograde, and a couple things to do. Obviously we need to circularize this orbit. That's going to come up in about 900 seconds. And then we need to align the plane in about 1500 seconds. So we're going to do the orbit circularization first. Warp ahead to that point. Oops, and I overshot because I had my mouse cursor over top this box, and when you do that, you don't have focus, so I wasn't able to stop the acceleration or the time warp. It's okay. Actually, I think it's the other way. When you miss apoapsis, if you rotate in a little bit, you can actually continue to circularize your orbit without raising your apoapsis too much. Except I'm going to go in the wrong direction with it. There we go. You see the apoapsis is actually coming down and the PEA is going up. So that gets us more circular. It's good enough for this purpose. Okay, now we need to bring the relative inclination down to 0. And we'll do that at the descending node, coming up here in about 380 seconds. And burning.
Translation.
Okay, and we have the relative inclination basically 0. Turn off the orbit normal autopilot. Can probably go ahead and close out this NFD. Okay, now I'm going to open TransX. And we want Phobos. Turn maneuver mode on. Go through the variables and simply we need to raise our altitude out to the orbit of Phobos. Bring this down a little bit. See, there we're now approximately the altitude of Phobos. Now we need to adjust the date. Change this to ultra. And I'm just watching that closest approach. Want to bring it way down. Down to 9 kilometers. Now I can go over to the prograde and bring this down to a really fine adjustment. Let's go with super. And you can see there I'm taking away a little bit of prograde and it's bringing the closest approach really close to 0. That looks pretty good right there. That's less than 1,000 meters, so we'll go with that. So now I will press VW to bring up the target screen, and the burn is going to start in about 1,500 seconds. So we'll warp ahead to that point, but first let's go ahead and orient the vessel to prograde. Okay. Now prograde autopilot to save a little bit of fuel, and warp ahead till the burn. Getting pretty close, so we'll go ahead and come out of time warp. Go back to prograde to let the ship get settled. Really close to the time to burn now, so we'll turn prograde autopilot off.
Rotation.
Go to rotation. Get the green X lined up. Right there. Burning in 3, 2, 1. Burning. And if you watch the orbit MFD, you can see what's going on over there. I'll target Phobos with it.
Translation. Rotation.
Get the green X a little more lined up there. And then we'll finish this burn
Translation.
out with translation. There we go. Now we press VW a couple of times to go over to maneuver mode and turn maneuver mode off. And there we have it. This is pretty close to before, a little cleaner of a flight this time, but I made it to this point basically last time without too much difficulty. So now I'm going to warp time ahead until I get closer to the rendezvous point. Okay. Now I'm going to use matter of fact, there's Phobos there. I'm going to use attitude MFD. I find this fairly useful. There may be other MFDs I could use instead, but this one seems fairly useful. Tells me several things, but mainly these attributes, I guess, are what I'm looking at. First of all, the distance is 550 kilometers away. That's quite a way, so I've still got some time. And when I get right up next to Phobos, these three attributes are going to be very useful. It tells me, my three directions of movement through space, how quickly they are relative to the rock, or to the moon. And I want these basically to all be 0 by the time I'm right up next to it. That'll mean that I'm basically in a stationary position relative to Phobos. But for now, I still want to get closer to it. To help me zero out my relative velocity with Phobos, there are probably a couple of ways to do it. I could probably just use this information. But what I'm going to do is use interplanetary MFD I'm going to use the circularization feature, but I'm going to wait till I'm really close to Phobos. And this will basically help circularize my orbit. And I'll show you how this works here. So you can see right now my orbit comes out here and then it goes really close back in. So I basically want my orbit to match Phobos. And interplanetary MFD will circularize my orbit whenever I press this button. And I don't want it to circularize the orbit now. I want to wait till I'm closer to Phobos. So here's my distance from Phobos. So I'll press T just to get in a little closer. Not exactly sure how close I should get, but at 80 kilometers I'll start the circularization burn. And then you'll see over here in Orbit MFD what's happening. Then what I'm going to watch is this, or my relative velocity basically. Okay, so still a little ways out from Phobos. I'm going to wait a little bit until I get a little bit closer. Go with 20 kilometers. Okay, now we'll continue to circularize the orbit. See what's happening over here. Still 16 kilometers out. So I want to get in a little closer than that.
5,000, 4,000,
Ooh.
3,000,
Go ahead and circularize the orbit. Okay.
rotation,
Something else I want to do. Change the reference now to Phobos. And wrong button. Change the reference to Phobos and set the HUD. There we go. Okay, now I want to face prograde to Phobos, just so I can see where it's at. Although it looks like I'm actually pulling away from it at the moment, so I may need to go retrograde. Yeah, it's behind me. Or not behind me, but... Okay. So now, I can rotate over. like such. Yeah, I want the surface HUD. Okay. Like that. Okay, so let me explain my situation here. My vertical speed from Phobos is plus 14 meters. So that means I'm going up. Like let's say that my fist is Phobos and my palm is the XR2. I'm going up away from Phobos at a rate of 14.7 meters per second. My lateral, this way left and right, is almost zero. It's 0.19. So what I can do
Translation.
is a little bit of 3 to zero out my lateral movement. And then my forward aft, I can use 6 and 9. Would be 9 at this point. So that I'm not moving forward or backwards as compared to Phobos. Okay. Okay, that's basically 0. And again, the lateral. And it won't stay perfectly at 0.00 at all times. So now I'm in position, and my only real movement is a little bit of up. So what I can do here is, I believe, 8. Yeah, 8 will push me down. That's basically firing a little bit of retro or translation out the top. So that's pushing me down toward Phobos. And I can zero that out. It's almost 0. It's getting there. Still climbing at a rate of 4 meters, 3 meters, 2 meters. And technically I'm captured by Phobos' weak gravity. You can see here. So I don't even have to do this anymore. I will now fall toward Phobos, but let me go ahead and zero it. Okay, there we go. And go ahead and zero the forward aft a little bit more. And the lateral. Okay, so basically if you understand now what's happening is that I'm straight over top of Phobos at an altitude of 18 kilometers, and I'm now falling toward Phobos at a very, insignificant rate. It'll take a very long time to actually fall all the way to the surface at this rate. Of course, I could just use a little bit of time acceleration to pass that time more quickly. I'm not going to actually land on Phobos just due to the fact that it's pretty much impossible. When you do land, what ends up happening is that you bounce back off because the gravity's so weak. So you get, touchdown, wheels up, touchdown, wheels up, and you can eventually settle into position, but it takes forever. So that's basically it. Took off from Mars, successfully rendezvoused with Phobos, and all of our various movements are zeroed out. So we are in perfect orbit with Phobos. So I'll go ahead and leave it at that. Hope you enjoyed this fly with me. And if you try this out, leave a comment down below. Let me know how it worked out for you. It's pretty cool to do these different types of flights to other moons other than just Earth to the moon. Moon is the body. And the first thing I can do better in this flight versus what I did last time, I can go ahead and fast forward time and bring the relative inclination down a little bit. It won't get very low, but at least I can improve it by about 1.5 degrees. So I'll just press T, take the warp out to 100, maybe 1,000, and we can see the relative inclination coming down. And I know just from checking this out prior to doing this video that it won't get much lower than about 11 point, I believe it was 11.6. Yeah, about right there. And you can see here we get Phobos really close to an equatorial orbit around almost around the Earth, but rather around Mars. So we're just going to take off as before and fly with the heading of about 90 degrees. And that should keep our relative inclination rate at about 0.00 across the board. So we'll have an improvement in the takeoff as well. Okay, so I believe that's everything. Let's go ahead and do this.
Information. APU running. Wheels up.
Okay, welcome to another Fly With Me video. And this time I'm going to simply repeat the flight that I did last time, simply for the fact that the last one ended in failure. And after that failure, I spent a couple minutes messing around, and I think I figured out more or less what I did wrong. So I thought I would just simply try again. So I'm on Mars in the XR2, and I'm going to try to take off, fly to Phobos, and rendezvous. So I'll bring up a line plane, select target, choose the about 11.68, I believe that was the lowest point. So that'll improve things just a little bit. Bring up the external MFD. And go ahead and turn the APU on. So we get the hover doors already open. Go ahead and stow the radiator for takeoff. I'll open one more external MFD here. Bring up the map. Raise the landing gear.
Up. Gear up and locked.
Okay, we have rotation thrusters already set. So let me rotate to 90 degrees. hover engines.
Mach 1.
Close the hover doors.